there, welcome to Coffee with Samantha Jane, and on today's show I'm talking to Jaime from Magic Torch Productions.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you, darling.
Good. How did we meet?
Well, it's a bit blurred actually.
I don't know for years.
I remember knowing that you were around before knowing you, because I was a psychic a medium working on the same street, and somebody would say, I'm off to see a redhead about a reading, and I knew that they weren't booked in with me. And so I was like, oh, there's another redhead medium around. But our paths didn't cross actually.
No.
But then as Facebook grew, I did see you on Facebook, and I just felt drawn to come and have a reading. So that's when we officially met. Was me coming to you for a reading, because you don't always get them yourself, do you?
No, I never get them.
Yeah, so
I have to book in with you.
I think I'm a bit more out of practice than you. Yeah.
How's the house move gone?
Yeah, really good. We've settled in really nicely, so all unpacking, everything's good.
Family loving it?
Oh yeah, but it's always nice to get into a new place.
It is, isn't it? New energy.
New energy,
vibe.
yeah, definitely.
Do you remember your mum and dad's house?
Oh yes. That was probably my training ground for every other house that comes my way.
Yeah.
So yeah, God, do you know what I remember moving into that house the day we moved in? We moved from up north to Reading.
Of course.
And so we moved in, and I remember the house being so fresh. And that fresh new house.
Freshly painted.
Yeah. Just looking, running around the house. It was one of those you could go all the way around. And it was great. I was 8.
I can't remember.
I think I was 8 when we moved to Reading. All very exciting. And then I think we must have been in there for about a few years. And then it all kind of got very interesting.
Define interesting.
So I remember my mum had cleaned my bedroom. I mean, I'm messy. I'm still messy, but I was incredibly messy as a youth. And she cleaned my room, and I went to bed that night, and I remember thinking, oh, this is really nice and crisp and everything. And I was in bed, and I heard wind come through my window, and I saw my curtains go.
Oh my God, yeah.
But there was nothing, my window wasn't open or anything, and I turned around in my bed to just check what that was, because it's a reaction, natural reaction. And I saw plastic bags all over my floor. And I was like, what? Back in those days, you didn't even see that many plastic bags compared to like you do today. But my whole floor was covered with them. And I sort of went back, pulled round again, and then as a reaction, when you think, that's not right. And I turned around again, and I got completely taken by spirit. And I felt it go through my head, all the way slowly through my body, so that I was pinned to my bed, and I was fully conscious and awake.
And you were about 10 when this happened?
I was probably about 10.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had no idea what was happening. I know that I was extremely frightened because I couldn't move.
Yeah.
My whole room had been swallowed by an atmosphere. It's not the first time I'd come across that. I'd had it since I was tiny, but it was so really, really impactful, this particular experience. And it stayed with me for a really long time. It felt like forever, and it's like when you're sort of taken and you can't pull yourself out of it.
Yeah.
And it felt like 20 minutes. And then suddenly, I remember thinking, you need to leave now. I don't know what this is, but you need to go. I'm scared. And it went through to the other room, which was my mum and dad's room. Okay. And it took my bed covers with it.
So in that moment, what did you even feel that was?
And in that moment, with like, I knew it was spirit.
Okay.
Because I'd had experiences with spirit since being tiny. I felt more male energy from its dominance than female. So I did think it was a guy. But it was actually, that was more cemented as the years went by.
Right.
So I'd actually visually see him, and I'd hear him, and he'd actually speak to me and things like that. So I knew it was a man from that, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was that the only spirit?
No, there was a younger boy in the spirit in the house as well.
Yeah.
And I'd say he was probably around about the age of 8, so similar age,
to you.
a little bit younger than I was at the time.
Yeah.
And he would only come and visit me occasionally on some nights. So, but the gentleman would be there. He could be there during the day, during the night.
Oh, really? Okay.
More active during the night.
Yeah.
But he was very present all the time, and I could sense when he'd come in because he'd swallow the whole house.
Okay.
And that was the start of
the Halloween season.
Everything that I feared would happen as a small child growing up with it.
Yeah.
It was definitely the most prolific experience because I had him there since, well, he's still there. He's still there to this day.
Okay.
And I actually don't stay over my parents' house because he will still come and visit me.
Your mum and dad then, if it went through the wall, let's say into your mum and dad's room, do you know what then played out in your mum and dad's room? Were they oblivious?
They were oblivious to it.
Okay.
So I was the only person in the house that was experiencing this. And it was an older gentleman, and he used to have big Doberman dogs.
Yeah.
So there was him, but there was also a small boy in the house, and he had a great big, like, English sheepdog, you know, the big scruffy haired ones.
Yeah.
But I never knew who was going to visit me.
Right.
So there was a lot of fear growing up around the house.
Right.
And it's like, you know, back in those days, there wasn't the internet.
No, true.
Or, you know, there wasn't, you can just go to the library.
We're 21.
So, and you talk to your family about what's going on in the house.
Yeah.
And because they're not experiencing the same kinds of things that you are, you're then on your own to try and make sense. And,
absolutely.
Trying to find ways to protect yourself as a child as well. But it happened for a really long time in that house. Like I say, he's still present.
So he's still in that house?
He's still in the house.
Wow.
I didn't think he was, but my mum did say recently that she'd met him on the staircase.
Okay. A shift then.
A shift. And I kind of felt validated for a minute. I'm like, oh, Mum, I'm so sorry you experienced that. But at the same time, I'm like, yes. I'm not the only one.
Thank God. Thank you, universe. Yeah.
But I think he was probably, to this day, the meanest I've ever come across.
In what way?
So he was quite poltergeistal in his way. So he was extremely strong, and he was very threatening. So, we all know the film Sixth Sense. Well, that was my experience in my parents' house. So, a bit of a personal thing, but, I would rather wet my bed than get up and meet him on the hallway to go to the toilet.
Yeah.
It was quite harrowing.
Yeah.
And all the way through my teenage years, he was the same, so he was extremely volatile. I just never knew what he was going to do next.
And this is the old...
That's the old guy. The little boy was lovely.
Yeah.
He would,
So do you think the little boy looking back was protecting you?
I've never really... And it gives me goosebumps to think about it, actually, because it's the only one that really still affects me.
Yeah. The old man.
The old man, yeah. I did wonder if, they were maybe the same spirit at different ages in their life. That's something that's always kind of resonated a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is odd because it was so polar opposite.
Different timelines.
Different timelines. But yeah, the little boy was lovely. He, you know, if I was getting undressed for bed, he'd leave the room, and he was very respectful. And then as soon as I'd get in, and he'd come and jump in, and I'd feel his dog jump on the bed, all four paws over me, and I could feel the little boy stroking the dog.
It's one of those things that you couldn't make it up.
You could
try
make it, yeah, I know. It sounds a bit bonkers, doesn't it? But not to you, not to you. To lots of people in the past, but yeah, lots of things. He was very, very threatening. And
what did you think he would do to you then? What did he do to you then? You're saying poltergeist. You know, like those carrier bags? Were they physically there? They were physically there. So when this all ended, was there literally plastic bags on your floor, or did they go with it?
They went with him.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
But they weren't sort of something that, you know, they weren't see-through, or, you know, they were actually in the
solid
room.
form.
I think what happened is that my mum, by cleaning my room, and she'd pulled things out and moved things, I think she kind of opened a little doorway.
A portal.
A portal. I think that's what sort of happened.
So it's your mother's fault.
Well, she got her comeuppance. But I think actually what sort of started it, I mean, there was rumours of an older man in the area and around a reservoir. So he had been seen with his dogs by other people, and he was very close to our house. My sister, I'm not sure if my parents will see this or not, whether they know this or not. But I remember as a teenager, her and some of her friends did a Ouija board in the house. I know, without knowing.
Yeah, back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day. You got the scary movies. It's the 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
You know, well, it's actually 80s by this point.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're just having a go.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting on the sofa as the younger sibling going, this doesn't feel right, and I'm not sure you've done that properly, or you've closed that down properly. And it was after that it really, really kicked off. Yeah.
Oh, so it's your sister's fault.
Sister's fault.
Your mum's off the hook.
Yeah. But I think, you know, it is the way, isn't it, with energies and stuff. If you move stuff, or
it's like I've known places where people have gone in and say bought a row of cottages to knock into one property, and the minute they've done the building, started the building, went knocking walls down, etc. Oh, hell has broke loose. And, you know, I've known grown men, you know, say grown-ass men builders who refuse to go on site because of what they were experiencing.
Yeah.
So going back to your experiences then, have things like that stopped you, or?
I mean, Sam, I move a lot. I'm in rented accommodation. You know, you do get your leases come up and you've got to move on. So I've lived in a lot of houses.
Yeah.
One of the things I have to always consider is who else lives there. Always.
And we're not talking the electoral
We're not talking like that. Who are the occupants of this house? Yeah. But what I do usually find, as I've got older and I've learned to manage and work with spirit, as opposed to being the frightened child of spirit, that I connect with the house before I move in.
Yeah.
And I find out who is in there. And I also find out why they're drawing us to that space.
Right, yeah.
Usually it's for a transformative reason.
Yeah.
You know, it's that next stage of development of something, not necessarily spiritual, but just in general.
For you.
For me and for my family and things like that.
Okay.
Because I do have to take my family into account.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like, you know, if you're open and everything, then you've got to make sure that it's not going to affect the family. So so the house that we're in now, I was told that there was a teenage boy who did take his own life in the house.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit like, oh, is that going to be too much for my kids? Yeah. You know, what's he going to be like? The previous people in the house who I knew said, you know, he's fine. Well, mother said he was fine. The older boy that grew up in the house said, no, that wasn't fine. But when I tuned into him in the house, actually what he wanted to do was to transform my career and to open my creative door again. And
Well, that's happening.
And it's absolutely is happening.
Brilliant.
But I have to find out why they want me to move there.
So you obviously got to make some spooky movies.
I always think that. When I saw did you ever? What is it? Is it paranormal? Did you ever?
I've watched them. Do you know what? To me,
it's just normal life, isn't it?
So boring. It's like watching CCTV from home. It's like. Why?
I haven't watched them because I don't actually like watching horror films.
No.
Because it happens anyway.
Yeah.
But that film, when I first saw it released, I was like, I should have just set up cameras in my house and not just make it up.
I wouldn't have charged £1 million fee either. Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. So it's definitely interesting to be moving to different places all the time.
Talking of family, your mum and dad obviously dismissed what you were experiencing.
Yeah, I mean, though, northern family, not really anybody talks about this kind of stuff. Back then it was very taboo.
Yeah.
I found people were quite unkindly about it. My older sister, my nickname was the Freak, which is not very helpful when you're going through It's not very helpful when you're going through massive hauntings in a property. Because my parents did get to the point where they wanted me to either see a psychiatrist.
That is so standard.
It's so standard.
Yeah. Even now,
yeah.
I know people who've had that other family members have wanted their children to get mental health help for what is actually a spiritual experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they also wanted to maybe get the house exorcised.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't really agree with them doing that, even though it was causing me massive problems. Okay. I didn't understand enough about what that is.
Yeah.
But also, you remember the film Beetlejuice? And there's that scene where all the spirits of that have been exorcised were just in a room going,
in your bedroom.
I just thought, I do not want whatever you're doing to me, I do not want to do that to you in return. Because, even though I didn't understand karma, I didn't want that kind of karma either.
Yeah.
So no, I sort of refused that kind of help, but I just had to manage it by myself. But the way I did actually was challenging.
Yeah.
Because
stand your ground. That's what I tell my clients. Stand your ground.
You have to, and it was the only way that
broke person. You wouldn't let them walk in your room at night.
Exactly.
Why are you letting the spirits?
Yeah.
Only they unzip the suit.
Yeah. So that's where I sort of learned my own protection, really. Yeah. But I tend to I don't work professionally as a medium now because of protecting and looking after the family. So.
Yeah. Oh, it's been great catching up.
Oh, yeah. Well,
now let me know when them spooky films come out.
I should get making them, shouldn't I? Yeah, filmmaker. Why am I making scary films? I'll get onto that, Sam.
Brilliant. Well, I hope you have enjoyed today's show. And if you have, remember to hit subscribe, ring that bell so that you get the next notification. Cheers.